Hey there, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be doing a book summary and review of this book here, that is Grit by Angela Duckworth. What's it all about? Is it any good? Let's take a look. Hi, I'm Stephen Burns from Mind School, and today we're going to be talking about this book here, that is Grit by Angela Duckworth. So before we kick off, if you're new to the channel, if this is the first time you're stopping by, then if you could consider subscribing, that would be absolutely fantastic. Also, if you could give us a like, if you like it of course, if you don't then, I don't know, just do what you do, but that would really help grow the channel and get these videos out there. So let's kick off, shall we? So what is this book all about? Well, it's based on the belief that in order to accomplish anything of note in life, the most important key qualities are perseverance and resilience, and this is what she refers to as grit. Now, she also says that there's other important qualities that are relevant to accomplishing great things, but grit is kind of like the glue that holds all of it together. Without it, the rest of the things just don't really work. So the book is divided into three different parts. The first part is where she talks about what grit is and why it's important. The second part, she focuses more on how to grow grit from the inside out. In part 3, she takes a slightly different approach and talks about how to grow grit from the outside in. So it's more about how to create a culture of grit and how to include it in things like parenting. So I think for me, one of the most important lessons that she talks about is the importance of effort. And she introduces this very early on in the book, and she bangs the drum about putting in more effort in your personal and professional lives, and she really talks about it quite a lot. That she's definitely got the opinion that people give up too easily, that they underestimate the amount of effort, the amount of application they have to put in to creating something of note, something that's reasonably big. And one of the ways that she emphasises the importance of effort is through two equations. And she basically says that you have to integrate fully these equations into your life in order to accomplish anything of any magnitude. So the equations are these ones here. So the first one is talent times effort equals skill, and the second is skill times effort equals achievement or equals accomplishment. So just to explain what these actually mean so you don't think that you're in a mathematics class. So the first equation, talent times effort equals skill. If we have talent, so every human being has a certain amount of talent, if you believe that's the case anyway. But talent in of itself doesn't really mean anything. You know, you could be talented, but it just really means that you have potential. So in order to, turn that talent into something tangible, to turn it into a skill, we obviously have to apply ourselves. We have to put effort in. So that's what that first equation means. But then when we move on to the second equation, even if you have skill, if you've turned that talent through effort into skill, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to achieve anything. You have to then take that skill and then apply more effort to turn it into an achievement. And yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, there's plenty of people out there that have skill but don't really do much with it, so they end up don't actually really achieving much. So the reason why she uses these equations is to illustrate the fact that effort counts twice. I'm sure you've noticed that effort is in both of the equations. So if you increase the amount of effort, the amount of application you put into the things that you're doing in life, then you'll actually get a double hit, you'll get a double whammy. It will help you convert your talents into skills, but those additional skills will then kind of add into the next equation, so it increases it from the start, and then it also increases your ability to turn your skills into achievements. So you end up growing exponentially by putting in more effort, by applying yourself. So I thought that was a pretty cool way to explain it. I mean, I've always known that by applying yourself, then good things do happen. You have to put effort in, but I've never really seen it being demonstrated in such a scientific and mathematical way as that. So I thought that was a pretty cool way to illustrate it. So that's one of the main principles that she introduces early on in the book. So then from there, she goes on to describe how you can actually start to cultivate grit. And she outlines a 4-step process that you can follow. And that 4-step process is interest, practice, purpose and hope. So if we dig into that in a little bit more detail, so the first of these is of course interest, and this is the idea that if you're going to have grit, if you're going to be able to push on and activate your resilience and perseverance, then you have to like what you do, or potentially even love what you do. And this makes total sense. I mean, I think it's common sense, to be honest. If you are a writer who doesn't really enjoy writing, then even if you're the most disciplined person in the world, eventually that's going to grind you down. You're going to eventually be burnt out and you'll probably end up giving up. There's a very good chance that'll happen because you don't enjoy the actual process of writing and what you're producing. So I think, again, this is common sense, but how often do people follow common sense? I think it's still very, very useful advice. The more you love what you do, the more you're going to do it. So you're going to push on even through tough times. So that's the first step, interest. The second step is practice. If you're going to accomplish anything of note, anything that is of any kind of magnitude, you have to practice. You have to put the hours in. You can't just get good at something by sitting in your bedroom playing the PlayStation or watching Netflix. You have to actually invest some time. You have to invest some hours. So in this section or in this step, she references heavily the work of peak performance expert Anders Ericsson. So he was the one that created this thing called the 10,000 hours rule. If you invest 10,000 hours into a subject or a discipline and you do it in a particular way, then you'll achieve some sort of level of mastery. So she talks about that heavily, that if you're putting the hours in, if you're practicing, there are different ways that you can practice. First of all, you have what's referred to as naive practice or random practice, and this is where you just do stuff and hope that you're going to get better. The second way of practicing is called purposeful practice, and this is where you're practicing with a goal in mind, with a purpose. And the third level of practice is what's seen as the gold standard, and that is deliberate practice. And that's where you practice with a goal in mind, with a purpose, but you also do it in conjunction with a coach. And the coach can help you think differently about how you do what you do. And they can help you overcome the plateaus, the obstacles that lead to stagnation. And what she says is, in order to create grit in your life, you want to do either purposeful or deliberate practice. You don't want to be doing random or naive practice. So that's the second step. The third step is where she talks about the importance of purpose. We kind of touched on this on the interest part. And that is that you have to know that what you're doing is meaningful, that what you're doing has some kind of greater purpose. So this is about really exploring the why behind why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. And I think this is really crucially important, especially if you want to cultivate that steeliness, that grit, that resilience, that perseverance. You're going to have to do things that are maybe difficult. You're going to have to overcome some quite big challenges and setbacks. So you have to be really connected with the deeper intentions behind why you do what you do. So in this part, she outlines an absolutely life transformational technique or idea. I think it's fantastic. I use it. And that's the difference between low level and high level goals. If you want a bit more information about that, I've actually done an entire video on that. I'll include a link to it in the description below. But the general idea is a low-level goal is something specific, something well-defined and tangible, whereas a high-level goal is the thing that specific and tangible low-level goal fits into. So we're talking about the greater purpose or the greater mission that specific goal belongs to. To give you a quick example, say I have a specific goal of doing 4 YouTube videos in a month. That's very tangible, it's very specific, I can measure it, I can do a SMART goal process around it if I want. It's what we would refer to as a low level goal. Whereas a high level goal would be more what doing those 4 videos fits into at a greater level. What's the greater purpose that all of that fits into? So for me, it could be getting information out there that makes a difference to people's lives. That's more of a mission, it's more of a greater purpose. And one of the things she says is that if you want to really cultivate that resilience, to push through tough times, to overcome the grind, so to speak, then you have to select low-level goals that fit into high-level goals. If you don't, they end up becoming isolated, you forget why you're doing what you're doing, and chances are you'll just end up giving up. You won't get that motivation to keep going because you don't appreciate the bigger picture, what all of those things fit into. So for me, this was probably the best part of the book. I think that is just very simple, but life transformational advice, and that's something that definitely I've integrated. Any goal that you have, you want to, don't just have them in isolation, you want to recognise how they connect with something a bit greater. What bigger and larger and more important mission or purpose does this specific goal fit into? It really does help with motivation. And then the fourth and final step of this 4-step process she outlines is hope. And this is the expectation that tomorrow is going to be better than today, or next month is going to be better than this month, or next year is going to be better than this year. And the way that she describes it is, it's not about having false hope. It's not about burying your head in the sand like some sort of ostrich and pretending that everything's going to be all right and just singing a happy song to yourself. It's about looking at hope from a very practical perspective. It's about taking a look at the lessons, the things that we can learn learn from today and then putting them into tomorrow so that tomorrow is actually better because we've grown as a person. And in particular, she talks about dealing with setbacks and disappointments. You know, one of the things she points out is that if you look at top performers, people who do create some very amazing things and accomplish some great things in life, they look at, you know, setbacks in a very different way to the average person. They actually don't really see them as disappointments. They don't see them as crushing defeats or massive boulders in the way of their success. They see them as vital and just natural learnings, just everyday parts of the journey towards accomplishing whatever it is they're looking to accomplish in life. And again, when we get down to this is common sense. This is like really cheesy Instagram advice, isn't it? That we should learn from setbacks, don't see them as, you know, crushing defeats. We should bounce back and all of that good stuff. But if you were to be honest, how much do you actually integrate that into your life? I would say most people don't. They do get upset by, you know, disappointment. When things happen that they don't like or don't align with their goals, then a lot of the time that does really set back people for a portion of time. So I think this is a really important thing. It's cheesy Instagram advice, but I think it is really, really crucial to integrate this into your day-to-day life. And that is pretty much it. There is a third part of the book, and this is where she talks about how to create a culture of grit, how to weave it into the fabric of groups, you know, the workplace and society at large. And there's also a section where she talks about how to incorporate grit into parenting as well. So if you're into that, if you are a parent, then I think you'll really love that section too. So that is Grit by Angela Duckworth. Is it a good book? Is it worth checking out? 100%. It's an absolutely fantastic book. In fact, I would say it's probably the best personal development book I've read in, you know, at least a decade. I genuinely think it's that good. I think one of the reasons why I like it is because it's very well researched. She does go by science, but she doesn't just stick to things that are thoroughly researched. She goes way beyond it. I think a lot of, you know, so-called evidence-based methods tend to go a little bit too far and subscribe to what I refer to as the church of science, where they don't want to touch anything that's not been like peer reviewed by, you know, several different independent people, and it's been thoroughly researched for like the last 10 or 15 years. She actually addresses this in the book too. She says that while having science and having research is very important, it's very, very useful, it does actually take time. You know, it can take years for, you know, studies to be done and peer reviewed and all of those different things. And while we wait for all of these things to be done, people suffer. So we have to come up with practical ideas right now that maybe doesn't have all kinds of research, you know, attached to it. So I love that because she is a scientist. She comes from an academic background, but she does still look beyond that. So that is Grit by Angela Duckworth. Check it out. It's an amazing book. And that is all for me from this week. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you've read the book, if you have a different opinion to me, then I'd love to hear what you think. And yeah, that's all for me for this week, and I'll see you later on.